or bring in for the first time Miles Simmons, Pro Football Talk and NBC Sports, right? Hi, Miles. Nice to see you. You look good there with the setup. And thanks for joining. Let's get your take on Week 18.
You guys hear me now,
because I think the big one that most people are pointing to are the Bills down in Miami. By the way, the Bills are favored by 3, but we've got madness on deck here.
Yeah, the Bills game, obviously, with the Dolphins is the one that everybody's going to be thinking about and everybody's going to be talking about. And the interesting thing about that to me is that, look, if the Bills win, then, yeah, they're the 2 seed. But if they lose and Pittsburgh and Jacksonville have already won, then they're going to be out of the playoffs. And that, to me, is one of those kind of crazy deals where, look, the Bills have been playing as good a football as anybody, basically since their bye week, if not a little bit before then. But still, with the way they messed around early on in the season, it's like, well, now they may find out that their Super Bowl hopes are going to be completely extinguished. So, yeah, this is going to be a really, really big game between them and the Dolphins on Sunday night.
Miles, how much of a loss does Bradley Chubb have on the defensive front and going after a quarterback with the mobility like Josh Allen?
Oh, it's huge. And the fact that they'd already lost Jalen Phillips, a game against the Jets, that makes it even worse because now you have your top 2 edge rushers that are gone. And, a lot of teams can sustain those kinds of injuries where it's one. But if you've got both of those dudes that were both really playing quite well for Vic Fangio in that defense there, and all of a sudden now you've got to compensate for that with your depth. When your depth becomes your frontline guys, that's not usually a recipe for success. And then also, you've got Xavier Howard, who's got a foot injury, and we'll have to see if he's going to even be able to play. And that doesn't help your back end when you don't have that. Now, they still do have Jalen Ramsey, obviously one of the top 3 defensive backs in the National Football League. But when you only have that guy and not the top pieces that you usually have around him, that really does make a significant difference.
Miles, let's rewind to Saturday night and talk about the Lions and Cowboys. Now, the game was full of drama, but I want to talk about the 2 teams moving forward. Both teams 11-5. I think we could all agree they both have some questions as we enter the postseason, but where would you put the Lions and Cowboys right now?
Well, I think both appropriately seeded at this point, right? With Dallas as the 2 seed going into the weekend, Detroit the 3 seed, but I mean, they're not on the level of San Francisco, and we've seen that with San Francisco basically blasting Dallas earlier on in the year. And frankly, I don't think Detroit is at that level right now with San Francisco either. So, Detroit could win a playoff game or 2. Maybe they do end up getting to think that Detroit, with the inconsistency, let's call it, that we've seen from their defense, is going to be able to stop Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and all those guys for 4 quarters. I don't know how that's going to happen. Now, I didn't really see Baltimore going up to Santa Clara and having the kind of game that they did either, so anything can happen, but it just, you've got Detroit. They're good. I don't know if they're great. You got Dallas, good. I don't know if they're great either, and we'll have to see how that shakes out. But they could have a playoff run, but I don't know if they're getting past San Fran.
Miles, we have a wager out here. It's a pick 'em. I'll give you the Niners or the Ravens to win the Super Bowl, or I'll give you the other 30 teams. Who are you taking?
I'll still say the Niners because I don't know. I think that they have the most talent, and that's with all due respect to the Baltimore Ravens, because I know that somebody I work with, Mike Florio, got in trouble a little bit for what he said about the 49ers Ravens. But I just think that you give Kyle Shanahan a second shot at that, and that game's going to look a little different. You give Brock Purdy a second shot at that defense, and that game's going to look a little bit different. So, yeah, it's not anything against Baltimore. I think that that's a really, really good team. They obviously have a very good defense, and they have kicked the crap out of 2 really good teams in the last 2 weeks. But I think when push comes to shove, the 49ers have the kind of championship experience that is a little bit lacking with Baltimore, at least, from a player standpoint, not necessarily a coaching standpoint. And, San Francisco's been in consecutive NFC championship games. They've played a lot of really big games, and I just think that this is the year where they put it all together.
Miles Simmons, NBC Sports, Pro Football Talk. I believe you wrote at Pro Football Talk about Sean McVay confirming he will return. Can you find a bigger surprise on the season than the Rams right now sitting 9-7? I certainly didn't have it before the season started.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I thought that they would be better than people might think, but I didn't know that, you get Matthew Stafford playing as well as he's played. Especially you look at what that team did last year. It never really even got started well. I mean, I was at that game that they had, the kind of coronation on Thursday night against the Bills, and they didn't look right. They almost looked a little bit lost, and Buffalo looked like a juggernaut at that point. And so it just went off the rails from there. But, this year it started well against Seattle. You had the Matthew Stafford thumb injury in the middle of the season, but since they're bye, they have really been one of the league's elite teams. And they did have some struggles against the Giants on Sunday. They've been having trouble finishing games well over the last few weeks, but I think that they can be dangerous because they've got Aaron Donald on defense, and whenever you've got Aaron Donald on defense, that guy is going to wreck shop if he can. And then offensively, you've got Stafford playing at a high level. Kyron Williams has been absolutely one of the league's best running backs, as long as he's been healthy all year. And with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua on the outside, like that's a really, really strong offensive attack. So I don't know who exactly the Rams are going to play, if they end up as the 6 or the 7 seed. But I mean, if they go to Detroit, let's say, as the 6 and Detroit's the 3, like, I could absolutely see them winning that game on the road.
Miles, Trevor Lawrence when healthy. Give me your assessment on him. And then Jacksonville. Is this team going to be a first-round exit, potentially facing off against Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, I think whether Trevor Lawrence is healthy or not, I don't know that Jacksonville is getting out of the first round of the playoffs. I think, the only way I think an AFC South team is getting out of the first round of the playoffs is if it's the Texans, and they're probably playing at home because they ended up winning the division because they won Saturday, and then the Titans beat Jacksonville on Sunday. I mean, it's hard to know what Trevor Lawrence is, right? Trevor Lawrence can show spurts of greatness where he's just on it. He's throwing lasers, he's throwing darts, and guys are open and everything. And then he just has these lapses where it's like, bro, what in the world are you doing? I mean, he's just wildly inconsistent to me. And it's a little bit disappointing because I felt like this is a year that you want to start to see him grow into one of these elite players. I mean, we've been watching Trevor Lawrence since he was a freshman at Clemson. So we know who this guy is. We know that he's got all the talent in the world. It's just he's not been able to put it together. So I don't know, man. I go back and forth on him, and I think that that's part of the problem. I don't know really what to make of him because he seems like he could be great, but right now he's not.
Yeah, I think you summed up Jacksonville perfectly as well. Houston, this is the last one. Houston, Indy, this Saturday, nightcap. Both teams right now, Miles, in the postseason, so essentially a pick 'em. You've got Houston laying a point at Indy. Who do you got in the matchup?
I'm going to go with the Texans because I'm going to go with the better quarterback. That to me is just the thing, right? CJ Stroud, he is back, played well last week against the Titans. And, I got to go with C.J. Stroud over Gardner Minshew. I think that Shane Steichen, head coach of the Colts, has done a great job over the course of the year, bringing Gardner Minshew along. And you wish you could have seen what Anthony Richardson could have done with the full season. But, look, C.J. Stroud has been one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League this year when he's been healthy. I'm glad he's healthy now. And I'm glad that we as a nation kind of get to see him because we really haven't had that kind of marquee game for the Texans this year. So I think that they're going to win, and I think that they're going to get it into the postseason.
Well done. Miles Simmons, Pro Football Talk. Got a bunch up there, NBC Sports as well, at Miles A. Simmons on Twitter. Great job, Miles. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.